What's going on, boys and girls? Welcome back to Fiki Flips, the most dumbed down real estate channel on all of YouTube, because if I can make money doing this, then so can you. We're back today with another question of the week episode, so let's get right into it. Today's question of the week comes from Money Making Oz here on YouTube, and basically his question was, let's go through your first wholesale deal. Let's hear what you went through getting through that first deal. So when I saw his question pop up, I was like, yeah, easy. We can easily do a video on this. I've actually done an entire meetup on this deal, the meetup group that I run once a month here in Reno, Nevada. So this was the deal from hell, and literally everything that could have gone wrong did, except for the deal fall completely apart, especially right towards the end of the deal. So I'll go through everything step by step, from how I found the deal, all the steps in between, and then finally to closing, and we'll get through all the crazy stuff towards the end. So I've already posted a video kind of on my story, how I even got started in real estate and then eventually on flipping, but we'll stick just to this first wholesale deal on this one. So when I first started actually pursuing wholesaling, I was doing very, very cheap forms of marketing to try to get some leads in my funnel. This included some bandit signs. I was mailing a tax delinquent list, which doesn't have many people on it, and you get the list for free from the county. So super cheap way to mail. And I was just posting Craigslist ads that say we buy houses and hoping that someone would respond to some of the ads. I didn't really have any money at the time, so I figured that these three things could be done for fairly cheap and pretty low risk. If the whole wholesaling thing didn't work out, I was still kind of skeptical about the process. Like, I knew that it worked, but I didn't know exactly how to do it, or how long it was going to take to work, or how much money you have to actually spend to get deals done. These couple methods were pretty cheap and could be done on little to no budget, so that's why I started there. So the lead that I ended up doing my first deal with came through a Craigslist ad, and this is still the only deal that I have done 3.5 years later that came inbound from a Craigslist ad. We've bought a few, 4 or 5 off of Craigslist or for sale by owners, but that's me reaching out to the seller. This is still the only one that I've done that the seller reached out to me through a Craigslist ad, and we still run Craigslist ads to this day, just in case. A couple weeks ago, I posted a video on how to find cash buyers, and I went through a couple different types of Craigslist ads in that video. But to quickly recap that, the 2 types of ads I was putting on Craigslist was 1, the We Buy Houses ad trying to attract sellers, and 2, I'm a wholesaler ad trying to attract cash buyers. So simultaneously, I was trying to get some leads and build my cash buyers list for free on Craigslist. So this guy hit me up through Craigslist. I was using like a Google Voice number, and I called him back. He had a deal, and it ended up being a mobile home in a park in South Lake Tahoe, which is in California. We're here in Nevada. Now, those 3 things are like red flags for a deal that I probably wouldn't even want today, but I had no deals at the time, so it was like any lead I got was worth pursuing. So as far as motivation goes for him selling this place, he had a few different points of motivation. First, he was behind on space rent in the park. So when your mobile home is in a park, you also owe a space rent every single month to the park. So he was behind on that by about $4,500 or $5,000, somewhere in that range. And every single month that he doesn't pay and he doesn't sell, that's going up by, $600 or $650 or whatever the space rent was. Probably his main source of motivation was a recent divorce. He kept talking about how his wife and kids had just left him, and they have way too many memories in this house, and that's why he can't be there anymore. He also was not living in the house. I'll get into where he was living in just a second, but it was also vacant. So it's just sitting there. It's costing him money every month, and he doesn't even want to go back there because he's in pain from the divorce and the family situation. So basically, I'm on the phone with him. I'm getting all this information about motivation. I'm trying to find out condition of the home, all that type of stuff that you do to pre-qualify a lead. And I told him that I was like, I don't know if we'll be interested in this. And that's meaning me, and meaning because I had no fucking clue what I was doing. I didn't know how to evaluate a mobile home. I really didn't even know how to evaluate a piece of real property either. But I just I guess I was sort of scared or something, and kind of trying to put it out there like, I don't know if we'll be able to make this happen, but let me check around and see. Little tip for new wholesalers, you can always put it on your partner. You're always going to partner with someone on the deal anyway. So if you don't know the answer to a question that a seller asks you, you can just say, you know what, I'm not sure about that. Let me check with my partner. Or you can always put it on the partner as far as price goes, because he's the shot caller, stuff like that. So I didn't really know what I was doing, and I was like, this is a mobile home. I don't know if we'll be interested in this, but let me check. So to do my best to try to get a valuation on this place, I was just using Zillow. I didn't have MLS access. I don't think that PropStream or any of those nice new tools were even a thing back 3.5 years ago. Maybe they were. If they were, I didn't know about them. I was using Zillow. All I did was zoom in on this park in South Lake Tahoe. I switched it from for sale to recently sold, and I was just going through recent sales in the park. At that time, I saw that brand new mobile homes that were just placed there were going for like 100 or 125, somewhere in that range. And some of the older used ones were going for about 60 to 75,000. So that's where I got my ARV. I wanted to be conservative because I didn't want to screw the numbers up on the first deal. So I set my ARV at about 60,000 just based on the recent solds that I could pull right off of Zillow. So when I called him back to make an offer, again, I was scared. I didn't know what I was doing. And I kind of framed it like, oh, you're not going to accept this. I'm not, this is where our number's going to be, and I'm not sure if you'd be interested in this. And I ended up offering him $7,500, really expecting him to tell me to go pound sand, especially since he owed, $5,000 or whatever it was for the space rent. So I offered him $7,500, and he ended up saying okay. And now looking back, one of the mistakes that I made throughout this entire deal was over-explaining things to the seller. And it's kind of funny because I over-explained the sale price to him, which then he still didn't understand, which almost caused the deal to blow up way later on. We'll get into that. When I offered him $7,500, I said, yeah, so we'll pay $7,500. You owe whatever the amount was to the park, so that'll leave you X amount walkaway money. How's that sound, or does that sound good? And he was like, yeah. So usually, that's kind of common knowledge when you're going to sell a house. If someone owes $100,000 and you offer them $200,000, it's kind of expected that they can just put two and two together and say, okay, well, I got to pay off my mortgage and I'm going to walk with $100,000. But I really spelled it out for them, and we'll get to that later on, where that thing almost blew up the deal. So he ended up saying okay to the $7,500, and then I met with him at his house over in Sparks to sign the contract. So he was living down here, he was working over in Sparks. He was living in a family member's garage, I guess just to get out of the house he didn't want to be in. So that's where I met him, and we signed the contract. So that was my first time ever signing some sort of contract with anyone. I over-explained it. Like, I went through each line item of the contract with him, and I should have just let him sign it. Most people don't even read the full contract, or, if they do, they want to run it by their lawyer or something like that. But I'm sitting there trying to explain something that I don't really even understand. I'm sure he probably knows that I had no idea what I was doing, but he signed anyway. And while we were going through the contract, it kind of dawned on me that this is like a contract for real estate, and a mobile home in a park is actually personal property. And I was like, this probably isn't even the right contract. We're going to have to get another contract signed. That dawned on me, and I said that to him. I'm like, you know what? I'm not sure if this is even the right contract, but let's just sign this. And then if we have to change it, I'll get the right one and come back and have you sign that. And he was like, yeah, okay, that's fine. So right after we signed the contract, I still hadn't seen the place. He hadn't sent me any photos because he didn't have a phone or a flip phone or whatever he had. So I ended up getting a key to the property from him at that time, and he let me go up to South Lake Tahoe on my own, take my own photos. So probably the next day or even that day, I drove, and it's like an hour and 15 minutes to this place. Drove up there, took some photos in hopes that I could sell this deal at some point. So the next issue with this deal was finding a title company that would even have the escrow. Being a personal property mobile home and being in California, none of the title companies around here would touch it. So I called, a few in Carson, a few in Reno. They're like, no, no, no. And then I called a few up in South Lake, and they said no. And one of them recommended, I don't even remember what title company it was, but they ended up referring me to their Auburn office, where they had an escrow agent that specialized in personal property mobile homes. So that's where I ended up opening up escrow, sent her the contract over email. Of course, she was like, yeah, this isn't the right contract. And I was like, no problem. I'm just like fudging my way through this. I've never done a deal. I don't speak the language of the industry. She probably knew that right off the bat. I was like, okay, what do we need to put in the next contract to make this kosher? And she was like, I'll just send you a contract. I was like, cool. So she ends up sending me like a California approved contract for personal property mobile homes. And I ended up going back to the seller a couple days later, and I said, here's the contract, sign here. So we re-signed the correct contract. I got that one submitted to the title company that would handle the escrow. And then at least escrow was opened up. Title company was cool with the contract, and everything was a go from that point. So I thought that was a lesson learned right there, is that title and escrow is your best friend. They can make your transactions really easy or really hard, depending if they're good or not. One of the questions I always get YouTube, Facebook, at the meetup. What title company do I use? Really, around here in the Reno area, all of the title companies can accomplish what you want them to accomplish as far as wholesaling and assigning contracts and all that stuff. It's just more about the escrow agent. You know, if they have experience doing the wholesale deals and they kind of know what you're doing, they're going to make your life a lot easier, and they're your go-to person for questions throughout the transaction, especially if you're new. So at this point, I had my first deal under contract. I had escrow opened up. I had photos of the property. Now it was time for me to find a buyer. I put together, kind of one-page pitch about the property and my numbers in there, which again, I was just guessing. ARV was $60,000, rehab was $20,000. Who the fuck knows? I had no idea. Purchase price $20,000. That's what I was trying to get for it. So over the few months that it took me from starting to pursue wholesaling to getting this deal under contract, I had built a buyer's list of maybe had 100 or 200 people on it just from doing those Craigslist ads that I mentioned earlier. So I ended up blasting out the deal on MailChimp to the entire list with this little one-page pitch, and had a link to photos in there and all that stuff. So I got a few responses off of that, but nothing really set in stone. A couple people were interested and they wanted to go look at it. I set up a date. I remember it was a Thursday, that coming Thursday, for a few people to come and check out the property. In addition to blasting out the deal to my current buyers list, I also just made an ad on Craigslist for the deal, which this kind of blows my mind. And I see this all the time still. It's like you find a deal on Craigslist and then you get under contract and then you're just marketing it right on Craigslist with a higher price. Like, you would think that the seller that was on Craigslist to put their property on there would see that and like blow up the deal. And I'm sure that does happen, but that didn't happen here. I didn't know any better. If that was the case today, I probably wouldn't do that. I would just take it to the buyer's list or a buyer you have a good relationship with. But that's what I did. I put it back on Craigslist, got a few more responses there. And that's like kind of a win-win. Even if no one was interested, you're still building your buyer's list by people reaching out interested in the deal. The third way I marketed this deal was going to a local meetup. This was the second meetup I ever went to. I went to the same one month before and said, I'm trying to wholesale. That was that first meetup I was scared shitless to go to. I almost didn't go. I had to bring my friend. And second meetup I went to, had the deal under contract. I printed out a few of those one-page pitches. They make you stand up and say who you are, what you do, that type of thing. And I said, I have this deal. Like, if you're interested, come grab one of these. So I actually met this guy, Jordan, at the meetup, and he was from South Lake Tahoe. He was a flipper, he's a contractor, he's an agent, all the above. And, I talked to him after the meetup, and he was like, yeah, I'm not really interested in that. And he's like, but I'll come check it out. I was like, yeah, that'd be awesome, because I just wanted his contractor opinion on what repairs would be, just for my own education. The open house that I scheduled was the very next day after that. So he was like, yeah, I'll come. It's like, cool. Next day rolls around. I drive up to Tahoe, and I think I had 4 people scheduled to come look at this place. Every single one of them bailed except for Jordan, who I just met the night before and said he wasn't interested in the deal. So he ended up coming. He walked through the place and he was like, yeah, I think it's about $30,000 in repairs, yada, yada, yada. I was like, okay, that's cool. That was a huge lesson learned in this deal, because now I had a picture of what a $30,000 rehab looks like. So I could kind of use that as a base on every other appointment I was going to shortly after that. And I had a better idea, definitely nowhere near exact or even fairly close, but I had a better idea of what repairs look like, at least a $30,000 rehab versus a $5,000 versus $60,000 or what have you. So after Jordan walked the property, got repairs, he was actually more interested than he was. It was a no from the start. And then he walked in, he was like, yeah, let me get back to you. We might take this and yada, yada, yada. So probably another day went by and he got back to me and he's like, we'll pay you $12,000 for it. So again, I had the deal under contract for $7,500. I was asking 20. He offered me 12. And I was just like, that's way less. Once you get kind of caught up in your emotions on the first deal and you're like, oh, I'm going to make $12,000 or whatever. And then, they cut that in half, or now I'm only going to make $4,500. But at the same time, I was like, I just want to get this deal done. No one else showed up. If this guy doesn't buy it, I have no idea how I'm even going to sell this deal. I'm going to have to back out of it. $4,500 is definitely better than nothing. And that's way more money than I've ever made at one time before in the first place. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. So I assigned the contract over to Jordan for his purchase price of $12,000, got all that stuff submitted to title, and the deal was assigned at that point. So now during escrow, this is where everything started to fall apart that hadn't already fallen apart. And it was just like everything at once happened. You know, this was over the holidays when I was dealing with this. So it was like Thanksgiving when I first started, and then once we got it into contract, it was like Christmas, and you have New Year's, and like the title company's not open on holidays, so like it's delay. You know, everyone in the industry is basically checked out after Thanksgiving anyway, mentally, so everyone's just acting like a piece of shit, which I've learned now. On top of all these delays, just because of the holidays and title and all that stuff, the seller was actually going insane on me. Like, I had PTSD from the Google Voice text notification for like 6 months after this, because literally every night he would text me something at like 4 a.m., 3:30 a.m., and it would wake me up. And that was before I learned about Do Not Disturb on the iPhone. And it would just be these novels of like, the deal's off, fuck this, fuck that, like, you're trying to rip me off and all this stuff. And then I would text him back the next morning, like 7, 8 o'clock. And by the time he woke up at 10 a.m., he would just be like, sorry, bad thoughts. And it's like, okay, like something's going on, like drugs or alcohol or both or something. But that was like an almost everyday occurrence that I was getting these texts, and you get a pit in your stomach, like, oh, it's gonna fall apart, like something's not right here. So on top of the seller doing that and the delays, the seller also had a family friend involved. So there was like way too many parties involved in this deal. It was like title, you know, those people probably knew what they were doing for the most part. I had no idea what I was doing. The seller had no idea what he was doing. Then he had a family friend who's getting like 3 different pieces of information from all 3 different parties here. She's trying to help him. And then, you know, if anything, she was just making it worse. But it was kind of nice to have a buffer, because she was kind of on my side, where I'm like, he's going crazy. And she's like, yeah, I know, we just need to get this done. So that was like another layer of just messed up to this deal. So to add to that, we got pretty close to closing, and then I'm talking to the family friend on the phone, and she mentioned something about, you know, like a $12,000 walk away money, or, you know, that was what the purchase price was. And I was like, no, it's $7,500. She was like, oh, that's not what he thinks. I was like, what do you mean? And she's all, well, he thinks that he's getting $7,500 on top of whatever he owes the park. And that's what I was talking about at the beginning. I was like, I clearly explained that to him on the phone when I probably shouldn't, and he still didn't get that it's $7,500 minus whatever you owe. The remainder is your walkaway money. He thought he was getting $7,500 on top. So at that point, she was like, oh yeah, this is not going to work out. Like, we're not even close on numbers and this and that. And so I was like, all right, you know what? I'll just pay, like, have a split it with him or whatever. I was like, I was willing to take it out of my cut, whatever he wanted, just to get this deal done, because it had been such a headache. And it was like a month and a half going on already, when I thought it was going to be like 10 days, like they teach you when you're learning about wholesaling. And all these delays, all the crazy texts, the family friend blowing up the deal at the end because of price. I was like, whatever, like, just take whatever out of my cut and let's get the deal done. And then, you know, on top of that, he was like trying to get us up on price, because the deal took so long that now he owed another month's worth of space rent that he wasn't anticipating from the beginning. That was coming out of my cut, and I was just like, whatever, let's just get it done. So first of the year passes by, holidays are done, everyone's kind of back at work. We finally closed this deal, and when I thought I was gonna make like $12,000 on my first deal, I ended up making just over $2,000. That's how much my cut dwindled down from the start to finally getting the check. Another lesson learned in that deal: never celebrate until you get the check. Like I said, everything that could have gone wrong did, besides it falling apart completely. So super grateful for that $2,000. Probably the hardest $2,000 I've ever made wholesaling. But I learned a ton throughout that first deal. Learned a lot about speaking the language of the industry, just the entire process, because I had never bought a house before. I had no idea how to open up escrow. Like, I literally didn't know anything before this first deal. So that's why I always tell people, it doesn't really matter. Just figure out your first deal, get that first deal done, and you'll learn a ton through it. All the unknowns that you have right now before you've done a deal will be answered if you can just get that first deal under contract, get it assigned, and close it. So with that $2,000 that I made, I ended up, that's how I got my LLC, which is like $500. I also put, I guess, everything back into marketing, just to try to re-up and try to get some more deals coming in. And that's basically the story on how I got started in wholesaling and my first deal. Here we are 3.5 years later, probably done like 60 deals or something like that between flips, wholesales, rentals, all that stuff. So it's been a fun journey. That was definitely one for the books. I'm glad we got to make the video on it and put it on the internet for everyone to see. Thanks for watching. If you're new here, make sure to hit subscribe, stay up to date with all the question of the week episodes and the project vlogs that we drop every week. And make sure to smash that like button, help us out with the YouTube algorithm, and we'll see you on the next episode.